High-intensity environments in dance training and the professional world can be overwhelming and stress-inducing. How do we create and facilitate dance spaces that are inclusive, accessible, and allow dancers to thrive? How can we support all individuals' access needs within dance training and the industry in an informed and mindful way? How can studio spaces become more inclusive of neurodivergent dancers? Through this project, we are taking steps in reframing the conversation around neurodiversity to include how we work together in dance spaces, exploring diverse ways of being, feeling, learning, doing, dancing in the studio, developing support strategies for neurotypical and neurodivergent dancers within the studio, the rehearsal space, or the audition, expanding on research surrounding the prevalence of dyslexia amongst performers, collaboratively exploring strategies to alleviate challenges dancers might face within stressful environments, developing tools to support mental well-being before, during, and after high-intensity activities, exploring how dancers retain information and seek out what can be changed to create a more accessible space in an audition setting, classroom, exam, or performance. We hope to positively impact how dancers operate within the studio environment, how they acknowledge their learning styles and processes and utilise them to their advantage, but also how they can nurture and support peers. Consider the wider impact on how dancers operate within the professional industry in future dancing, making, and leadership roles.
Hello, my name is Charlotte Edmonds and I'm one of the co-founders of Move Beyond Words. And the reason why we're doing the Neurodiversity in the Studio workshop is that as a company that houses and supports neurodivergent dancers, we and others recognise the need to support artists and dancers within our industry, especially coming from a neurodivergent point of view, to support people in creating accessible environments and equal opportunities for all.
So I'm Phaedra Petsilas. I'm the head of studies at Rambert School. So I lead on all things academic. And what was really interesting about this process for me was the fact that often neurodiversity, I suppose, is utilised or looked at, particularly in school. It's interesting to see how neurodiversity pans out in the studio. Because normally we think about it very much in relation to academia, particularly when it comes to the school. So to see how, and to acknowledge how people might feel or how they might operate within a studio environment is really important. And in fact, the students that we're working with are here and mostly training to be either performers or choreographers or get into the industry in a practical sort of sense. So acknowledging what they might need and what their access needs might be within the practical aspect of our training is really important, and that really highlighted for us, it will rewind back to how we teach and how we create space and manage the studio environment or hold the space, and maybe might filter into actual pedagogy.
I'm Jessica Lowe and I work in dancers' health, wellbeing and performance at One Dance UK, and I've been supporting with the Neurodiversity in the Studio project as a research facilitator and consultant. Having carried out research around learning styles with neurodivergent dancers before, this project was a real opportunity to dive a bit deeper into some of those niche, complex nuances that arise for them in high-intensity training. I'm also a neurodivergent thinker, learner and dancer myself, so this project has been particularly significant for me. I can empathise a lot with the experiences these dancers are having, and it's been really thought-provoking to hear their perspectives about how we as peers, teachers, choreographers, directors can better support and consider these kinds of specific individual needs in and beyond training.
I found the tasks today interesting when we were having to talk about different neurodiversities and then write about what they were and then try and express that in movement. And we had lots of conversations about so in my group there were 3 of us and we were all neurotypical, and we were like, I don't personally have any like very direct experience of this, but obviously I know lots of people, and we were just it was an interesting conversation of like, how do you approach that respectfully and being aware of your limitations, because you only have your experience. But I'm glad we did the task, because we actually found a lot out in the process of doing it.
Kind of because I'm neurodivergent, I think it was more just like hearing all these things and then being very affirming and kind of thinking like, okay, I've actually got to kind of keep going with this process of like unlearning this like narrative of like, oh, I'm lazy, or oh, I'm just not working hard enough, or whatever, and like actually these things can be my strengths, and like I can see things in different ways to other people. That is good.
Yeah, I think like the labeling the for like someone who is neurodiverse, it's not that society has made that an issue, because society hasn't like accounted for it, or like the way we function about in life in general hasn't made it accessible for that person, and that's not their fault, that's the systems and the processes around them, because your neurodiversity, like you said, has many strengths to it, and by labeling it as, it means that you struggle with this and you struggle with this and you struggle with this. Yes, there are of course things that are going to be difficult, but that's not that person's fault. It's because people haven't made it accessible around them.
Yeah, and also I guess just like the space doesn't need to be necessarily set in like another set of new rules that solve the problem. Is more like, it's more of a situation of like the space needs to be like adaptable and malleable for any given person and what their needs are and what they're feeling that day, and there just needs to be an open-mindedness instead of like trying to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah, that's a really
because
good
then
point,
we're back in the wheel, and then there's no point in none of the work is done.
And I guess it's the conversation. Obviously, it can't only be left in conversation. It's important that action does take place, but conversation and talking about it is a really good place to be able to make sure that does continue happening. We don't go, this is the issue, fix it, these are the solutions, and then we carry on, because there's only going to be more issues from that.
And also it's like good to have these conversations now, because we're all forming our own practice, and we're technically the future of dance or whatever. So